How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be working on Algernon. I already went ahead and did the Rust scan so we can see what ports are open. We see that anonymous login is enabled for port 21. We also see port 80 is open and it's a Microsoft IES server. We see 135 SMB is open, and we also see port 9998 is open, and we see more data has returned versus port 80. So there might be some non-default IIS pages on here. And we also see this 17001 remoting port, ms.net remoting services, and that looks a little weird. So let's start with FTP. And as you can see, we have access to these 4 directories. This logs directory is the only directory that has some data. And we see all these logs. Going through the logs, we didn't really see any useful information, but we did see an admin user here. Let's move on to SMB client. And the first thing we can do is use SMB client to see if we have null login. And we don't. Let's try enum for Linux. And we're going to do -A for all simple checks. And we don't really see any useful information here. Now let's check the web ports. As you can see, on port 80 it's just a default IIS page. Let's check the page source. Nothing interesting here. Let's run FragsBuster. And I used the -N option first so that it won't do any recursive scanning, just to clear up some of the noise. And I always use big.txt first. Let's run that, and let's also, in the meantime, go to port 9998. And we get redirected to this Smarter Mail login page. And let's also go ahead and scan this with FragsBuster. On port 80 we don't really see any useful directories there, so we can stop enumerating port 80. And back on port 9998 we see a few directories. We also see a few 500 errors. Since it's Windows, we can use the lowercase word lists. So if we look at here, we just see error message. Look at the 200 responses, and we see views. So nothing interesting there. Let's check scripts. That looks pretty interesting. It's nothing. So now let's do raft directories, raft files, and raft words. And we can use raft lowercase. We can use the lowercase word lists since this is Windows. And also to clear up some of the information that we don't need, looking at the help menu, we see that uppercase S, we can filter the size that is returned, so -S. So as you can see right here on views, we get a size response for 0. So we can do -S0. And we can also filter the response. So with -C we can filter the status code. So let's filter out 404 and 301. And if we don't find anything useful down here from the home directory, we can also try to fuzz the interfaces directory directly. So let's go ahead and do that up here. Interface, and scan that. So in interface we see a couple of subdirectories. The only one that actually returns something different besides the login page was this directory, the meetings directory, but there wasn't any useful information here. And sometimes you just have to view the page source and look for other directories within the page source. But as you can see, we don't see any useful information here besides Smarter Mail, but we don't see a version number for Smarter Mail. And if you're on the exam, make sure you're thorough, and as I said earlier, make sure you're using different word lists. So in this case, I would use ref large directories lowercase, ref large words lowercase, and ref files lowercase. But to save time, since I've already completed this machine, let's move on to port 17001. And as you can see here, it shows a Smarter Mail 6985 remote code execution exploit. So let's use search exploit Smarter Mail. You always want to look for some type of script that you can run, so Python. Sometimes the .txt exploits are helpful. It's not necessarily an exploit, it's just a proof of concept that tells you how to exploit a certain vulnerability within that CMS. So let's go ahead and read more about this one. So it says any version of Smarter Mail before 6985, and we also see this .NET remoting, which also showed in the Nmap scan, and this is the information that we need to change. So let's go ahead and copy this and go back here, subl exploit.py, paste that in here. We also see the payload. Now let's put in our ton0 address, so ifconfig ton0, and copy that. Paste that in there. Now let's go back to the Nmap scan and find a L port to use. So let's use 445. We always want to use a open port, so change this L port to 445, and we want to set this to our R host, so the host that we are attacking. Now let's save it. Let's make it an executable. We also want to do rl wrap netcat nvlp 445 to set up our listener, and let's try to run it. And as you can see, we get this syntax error, invalid non-printable character on line 15. So we went ahead and Googled the error, and it says if you copied code off of the web, sometimes it puts some encoded non-printable characters within your coding script, and all you have to do is look where the error was, find those characters, and remove them. And if we look at our exploit here, it's these 0x200b characters. We just have to remove all of these characters out of our Python script. Now let's save it and try to run it again. And as you can see, we now have a shell. Let's do whoami/all, and we are root or NT system. The key takeaway from this machine is to make sure you thoroughly enumerate all ports and do not get stuck in a rabbit hole. As you can see, the actual exploit for this machine was very easy, but if you get caught on trying to exploit the port 9998, you will spend a lot of time trying to complete this machine. Thanks for watching.